and thank you for joining us. I understand you were with Ellen last night over at the museum, which, for obvious reasons, is one of my favorite places. And it's something that my great-grandfather founded in 1929, which was really a testament to his best friend, Thomas Edison. And if you think of the innovation that took place during that era, it was really quite amazing. You know, I don't know if any of you saw the photos, but there was a group every year that took a camping trip. It was Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, my other great-grandfather, who was Harvey Firestone, and the naturalist John Burroughs. And the four of them they called themselves the Vagabonds, and they would take trips around the world, well, usually just around North America. They'd go to northern Canada and throughout the US every year, and they'd sit around in the evening and they'd discuss the latest innovations. And I remember when my grandmother, before she died, went to one of those events. Usually they didn't allow the wives to come along, but she went. And she said it was quite amazing because Edison had strung portable lights up among the tents as he invented a generator to do that. So she was with the guide on that event, and they were up in northern Maine, and she pulled into the general store with the guide. And the guy looked out the window, and the proprietor of the general store looked out the window and said to the guide, "I think I recognize those people." And the guide said, "Yeah, that's Harvey Firestone, that's Henry Ford, that's President Coolidge, that's Thomas Edison." And so the fellow who ran the general store turned to the guide and said, "Yeah, right, and who are you, Jesus Christ?" But you know, you think of the innovation that took place back then, and it was just incredible. You know, many years later, my great-grandfather was talking about the early days of Ford Motor Company, and he said, you know, if I'd asked my customers back then what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And so you think of really the ultimate disruptive industry. Back at the, you know, around when Ford Motor Company in 1903 was founded, it really was the ultimate disruptive industry, and with just tremendous innovation taking place. But that rate slowed dramatically over the years, and it really wasn't until 2006 when I first interviewed Alan Mullally and asked Alan to join us. We were sitting in my house in Ann Arbor, and we were talking about the restructuring that was going to have to take place. And I said to Alan, there's no point in us going through all the pain that we're going to have to go through as a company if there isn't light at the end of the tunnel. And so we started talking about how we would completely reinvent the Ford Motor Company. And we decided that we would, right there on the spot, that first day, we decided that we would stand for two things as a company, two things that Ford had really never stood for, at least in modern times. One was that we wanted to be the fuel economy leader. And that sounded ridiculous because the #1 reason that customers rejected Ford back then was fuel economy. So you know, one of the things that I talked to Ellen about is how can we take our biggest weakness and turn it into our biggest strength? And the other was being a leader in technology. And really to deliver the first one, we probably had to be the second. But it wasn't just powertrain technology, it was also infotainment and safety, and really, you know, technology in its broadest sense. And it didn't mean that we had to be the inventor of that technology, although in some cases we might be, but we had to be a very quick implementer of the technology in a way that our customers really valued. So we set down that road, which really required a level of innovation and frankly acceptance of innovation that our company hadn't seen in many, many years. And to me that was wonderful for a lot of reasons. Many of you may know that, you know, I've considered myself an environmentalist really my whole life and really fought this industry for many years on environmental issues. And really, if you think back to the early days of environmentalism as it pertained to the auto industry, it was a fairly hopeless proposition because the technology wasn't there to deliver everything that people wanted. If you wanted to be a green driver you had to give up things. You had to give up horsepower, you had to give up often air conditioning, power windows, all those kinds of things that people in the end really didn't want to give up. And it wasn't until technology started to progress that you really could deliver both environmentally responsible driving and also the other creature comforts that people have come to look for. So as we look forward now, and where does the future going to take us? Well, we could talk about anything you'd like to talk about, because what I really like to do is have some dialogue with all of you rather than a monologue. But just a few thoughts. So we are well on our way towards cleaner powertrains, and whether it's cleaner internal combustion engines, hybrids, plug-ins, EVs, biofuels, still working hard on hydrogen. And so, it's really interesting the path that we're on in terms of cleaner propulsion systems, either cleaner fuels or cleaner technology in the vehicle itself. And you may have touched on this last night with Alan, but I believe that without a national energy policy, we're not going to optimize any one of those. It's going to remain fragmented, which isn't the best outcome for our country and frankly for our industry. And we can get into that later if you'd like. And also, I gave a TED talk a couple of years ago about another big issue coming at us called global gridlock, and the kind of ways that we're going to have to deal with that as a mobility provider. So, just very simply, we're going to go from about 7 billion people on the planet today to about 9 billion by mid-century. During that same era, we're also going to be urbanizing, so more and more people moving to cities. And if you travel around the world today, you already know that in major cities around the world, that getting from point A to point B is really potentially a nightmare. And so we need to get our arms around this issue and figure out how we're going to provide mobility to individuals living in an ever more crowded world. And that's something, and there are a lot of interesting technologies that are taking place to enable that. There is no one silver bullet, and frankly, we're very early days along this journey. But things like vehicle-to-vehicle communication, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, lots of autonomous driving features before we get to ultimate autonomous driving. All those things are going to be enablers to allow us to provide mobility, particularly in urban areas, but not exclusively in urban areas, to people in an ever more crowded world. And that's something I'm spending a lot of my time on. And it's going to require not only a lot of technological innovation, but frankly, a level of coordination among city planners, because every city starts with a different set of assets in terms of transportation around the world. So a solution that works in London may not work in Mumbai, and Mumbai may have a very different solution than New York City. But a lot of the technologies that will enable solutions will be common across the globe. And ultimately, everything's going to have to be in a single system, all speaking to each other, whether it's bicycles, subways, taxis, pedestrians, private cars. Everything's going to have to be in a single network to optimize transportation in major urban areas. So to me, it's an incredibly exciting thing to be working on because, again, if you think of the level of innovation that's going to be required to deliver that, I think it's wonderful because it will keep our company and frankly our industry really at the forefront of technology. And I'm on the board of eBay, and one of the reasons I enjoy it so much is it takes me to Silicon Valley on a very frequent cadence. And when I'm out there, I make a point of getting out and seeing a lot of new companies, meeting with innovators, meeting with venture capitalists, and I love the rate of innovation that's taking place. It used to be that the auto industry wasn't even on the radar screen of Silicon Valley. Now we are very much on the radar screen, and it's not just startups like Tesla and Fisker and Coda and those kind of OEMs, although those are emblematic as well, but also a lot of the technology that was initially being developed for other industries and other applications now are starting to find their way into the vehicle. So this is an incredibly exciting time. The rate of innovation is something that I haven't seen in my working lifetime before. I'm very energized by it. And you know, again, we Ford, and I don't think any individual company needs to be the inventor of all the innovation. But what we have to be is very nimble customers and be really aware of what's out there, who's being disruptive, and how can we incorporate that into our company.